Beneath a sky already threatening summer heat, one lone figure worked the dry earth in relentless rhythm. His shovel struck dust and rock, each blow raising a small cloud around boots worn thin by seasons of hoping. Along the distant fence, the farmer's neighbors leaned on their truck doors, squinting at him with a mix of pity and disbelief. Laughter, not cruel but certain, drifted through the air as they nudged each other and wondered aloud what madness possessed a man to dig for water where none had ever been found. "He'll wear himself into the ground before he finds a drop," someone said, shaking their head. Still, day after day, the farmer pressed on alone. The patch he chose looked no different than any other, just another sunburned spot in a thirsty county. As shovelfuls of earth piled up, so too did the speculation. Was this stubbornness or desperation? What did he know that no one else did? Around dinner tables and at the feed store, the whispers grew. Out on that lonely field, hope and folly were impossible to tell apart, and the whole community waited to see which one would win before the summer's end. The valley had always been a quilt of green fields stitched together by winding creeks and slow-moving streams, but year by year the stitches had begun to unravel. Old-timers remembered the days when pulling water meant lowering a simple tin bucket, but now the ground itself felt hollow, echoing with the ache of weeks without rain. Rows of cornstalks stood brittle and pale, their leaves rustling like dry paper in the restless wind. Cows bunched under lone cottonwoods, their ribs showing beneath dust-caked hides, while irrigation pumps sat quiet in low-lying fields, defeated by empty wells. The farmer's land carried the weight of family stories, every fence post, every weathered board in the barn built by hands long gone to rest. Neighbors talked in low voices about dead streams and shrinking ponds, certain that no one in living memory had found water on this rise of parched clay. The county's maps showed nothing but disappointment. Planting another well, they said, wasn't just risky, it was wasteful, maybe foolish, and certainly too late to change the fate of the harvest. Yet with every swing of his shovel, the farmer wagered his family's future, betting against the sun, the soil, and the certainty of those who'd already given up. As a boy, he'd sat at his grandmother's kitchen table, listening to stories older than the worn linoleum beneath his feet. There were tales of his grandfather, a wiry man with a sixth sense for water who'd once struck a hidden spring during the worst drought anyone could recall. That spring kept the farm alive when neighbors lost hope, and the memory of it settled into every conversation like a blessing and a dare. In yellowed photo albums, he'd seen black and white images of proud harvests and muddy boots, family faces sunburned but smiling beside a churning, sunlit well. Those lessons came back each night as he scraped out a few more inches of clay, his grandfather's words echoing in the hush. The earth only reveals its gifts to those who believe they're there. This wasn't just about the crops or the bills stacked on the kitchen counter. For him, the dry years tested more than patience, they tested the invisible thread tying generations together. Quitting would mean letting that thread snap, leaving all that faith and stubbornness to dry up with the last of the summer rain. That was something he simply could not do. As the weeks stretched into months, the well grew deeper, but so did the shadows both in the earth and across the farmer's face. His shovel, once steady and true, hit layers of stubborn clay so dense it rang like pottery. The handle cracked under pressure and had to be mended twice. One morning, the old hand pump he'd borrowed from a cousin seized up and refused to turn, its gears shrieking in protest at every hopeful attempt. By now, neighbors drove past without even slowing, rolling their eyes, leaving fresh tire tracks and sharper words. "He's digging himself a grave, not a well," Someone jeered at the post office, and others chuckled in agreement. Tension crept into his home, too, his wife pressing a worried hand to his shoulder at dinner, his son quietly avoiding questions about whether they'd make it through. Still, every evening ended the same. Lanterns burned in the yard long after other houses had gone dark, the farmer's silhouette steady above the half-finished hole. Doubt swirled around him like dust, but he carried on, each new day drawing a clearer line between his faith and everyone else's certainty that he would fail. On one restless night, rain tapping the tin roof and worry pressing close, the farmer sat hunched over his kitchen table, hands traced with old calluses and fresh blisters. Flipping through a battered box of family keepsakes, his fingers fell on a forgotten leather-bound journal, the corners worn and pages mottled with age. It was his grandfather's, the handwriting looping and sure. Between notes on crop cycles and weather were careful sketches. One led to a spot near a line of willow trees at the field's edge, marked Spring 47. A memory sparked. As a child, he'd watched his grandfather taste the air, then drive an iron rod into the ground until it sang. Inspired, he set out before dawn with his own make-do dowsing rod, walking slow circles by moonlight until, just beyond the well's current edge, the rod vibrated in his palm. There, in the hush before sunrise, he marked a new spot. Maybe it was science, maybe faith, or just family wisdom, but for the first time in weeks, hope felt real again. If the old man's instinct had saved them once, maybe the answer was right beneath his boots all along. Armed with memory and a sense of purpose that outlasted aches and exhaustion, the farmer began again at the new spot marked by his grandfather's journal. He fashioned a new handle for his shovel, bound tight with twine and determination. Each morning before the sun crested the hills, he dug in the cool silence, earth cold and heavy. By midday, sweat soaked his shirt, dust caked to every inch of his skin. He adjusted the angle of the shaft, recalling an old trick pile, the dirt in crescent moons to keep collapse at bay. Stop and listen for the sound only water makes against stone. The neighbors could see the deepening hole from a distance, and while a few drove by slower, none stopped. They had seen hope fade before. Some nights he worked by lantern, hands bleeding and palms raw, spilling curses and prayers in equal measure, feet slipping on muddy ledges when a summer storm rolled in. Doubt came howling, whispering it was all for nothing. Yet his mind clung to the journal, replaying the old sketches, feeling the memory of his grandfather's voice in his ear. After weeks of sleepless struggle, muscles trembling, heart heavy, his shovel finally struck something softer, cooler, a thin trickle glimmering beneath the stone. At that moment, every hardship felt worth it. A surge of hope poured up from the earth, and dawn broke as water gathered at his feet for the first time, under the unrelenting sun. As pastures browned and gardens shriveled to dust, word trickled through the county faster than water ever had. The stubborn farmer's well was running. First, a shallow stream, then a clear, steady gush. He rigged pipes and buckets, guiding the cold blessing to his drooping corn and thirsty herd, watching color seep back into the fields with every passing day. What was once a patch of hopeless ground became a small miracle, a green oasis ringed by parched, desperate land. One by one, neighbors arrived in silence. The same voices that had laughed or doubted now carried empty jugs and heavy hearts. Some came out of pride, others out of genuine need, all of them worn thin by fear for their families. The farmer said nothing of old jokes or cold shoulders. Instead, he pointed to the well and shared what he had, filling every bucket, every barrel, until hands that once built fences between them worked side by side, passing water in a chain of gratitude. In the shade beside the well, children giggled and splashed. Old friends were made new as humility replaced pride, and the risk that nearly broke one man became the salvation of many. All around, the land itself seemed to sigh in relief, a silent thank you for faith that refused to surrender. With the drought fading and fields turning green once more, the farm became a place of gathering meals shared under wide skies, laughter echoing between rows of corn that no longer rattled dry in the wind. Neighbors who had once kept to themselves now swapped seeds and stories, fences mended as hands worked together long into dusk. The farmer, standing by his well, understood what his grandfather had meant. Water runs deeper than just the soil. It flows through families, through memory, through the invisible lines that bind a community. He felt no bitterness for the laughter or disbelief that had come before. Instead, he welcomed every handshake, every small offer of help, knowing each gesture built the legacy of the land and those who would follow. The well no longer marked a gamble. It marked the moment when doubt gave way to hope, and an empty patch became the root of something lasting. In the end, he realized, it wasn't about what you owned, but what you chose to give. Some fields sprout only after the longest drought. Sometimes it takes a single voice against the crowd to remind us that what seems impossible today can become tomorrow's saving grace. This story belongs to anyone who's faced ridicule or doubt, who's felt alone, digging for a hope no one else could see, and kept going anyway. The farmer's well stands as proof that faith isn't just stubbornness, but a way to honor those before us and provide for those yet to come. In a world quick to dismiss or mock what's different, it's the patient, the listeners, and the ones willing to endure hardship who make room for miracles. Every bucket of water drawn from that well is a quiet victory, a lesson in humility and courage whispered from the earth itself. As folks around here say, you don't find water by cursing the sky, you find it by digging where you believe it lies. If you've ever been the only one who believed, if your hope has ever made a difference, share your story below. Let us know where you're from and what keeps you digging. And if you're new here, subscribe and join a community where faith and family are always in season.